Hello and welcome to The Turning Point. This is the podcast for men who know deep down that comfort is costing them the life they're capable of. Because every man faces moments where the path splits. One direction leads back to excuses and familiar patterns. The other demands ownership, high standards, and the courage to step forward. Those moments don't look dramatic, but they quietly define who you become. I'm Tim Guest. I'm the founder of Comeback HQ, where I help men to rebuild their health, discipline, and direction. And today's conversation lives right in that space. My guest today is Ollie Ollerton, former UK Special Forces operator, best-selling author, and CEO of BREAK-POINT, an organization focused on breaking limiting beliefs and unlocking performance. Ollie has spent years operating at what he calls the break point, the edge where excuses disappear and character takes over. Because when you're rebuilding after a setback, stepping into leadership or fighting your way back into shape, the question is always the same. Who are you when it would be easier to stop? Ollie, welcome to The Turning Point.
Hello, Tim. And you know what? I'm so excited after hearing that introduction. This is my language.
Yeah, great. Well, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming, my friend, but it's the right time.
I would agree. For those who don't know, I have worked with Ollie for a long time in Ollie's coaching courses. And I kind of feel like that guy at school who's talked about his girlfriend for years and years. And then finally he's brought Claudia Schiffer along to the school dance, because I talk about you all the time, Ollie, but no one's ever seen you in my personal life. So here you are.
I've never been compared or used as an example of Claudia Schiffer. That's for sure.
That's the first thing that came to my head. So how's things with you?
Yeah, really good, mate. Constantly leaning in, I'd like to say. You know, that's something we'll talk about on this, but yeah, constantly leaning in and feeling the pressure of everything and knowing that that's a good thing because it's growth.
Yeah, leaning in, that's a good word. So another guy I did a podcast with recently, he said he stopped making major decisions in life and just making small choices, and said something feels good, you lean in. Feels even better, you carry on. If it doesn't, you go back. And he said that's been quite liberating for him. So I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because this is the point where a lot of people turn away, don't they? And they walk away from those moments. But as soon as you can start to turn around and say, thank you for this moment, because this is where I'm challenged and this is where I'm growing. It's like you look at it as a thank you opportunity when things usually would say, turn around and go back. It's like, thank you for this. Everyone can be a good leader when life is easy. But as we know, Tim, as we were always talking, easy makes life hard.
It does indeed, yeah. So I've got a few questions which we're going to fire through now. So let's start off with, so when people hear your name, most of them think with elite mindset and mental toughness. But before all of that, who were you growing up, and what shaped the man you became?
Yeah, that's a bit we could go down a long journey on this one, but I'll try and do a bit of a bird's eye view on that story. Well, my life started at 10 years old. And the reason I say that, I had a very traumatic experience at 10, which would be my first break point. And that was when I was pinned to the floor by a circus chimpanzee, believe it or not. I laugh now, I didn't then. And it was tearing lumps out of me, and I realized I was going to die. And it was in that moment I heard a voice in my head that said, you don't die today. And I don't know where it came from, but I managed to stimulate a load of courage to be able to retaliate. I went into a place that I never knew existed. I'd never been tested before in that realm and never needed to. And that I found this inner potential that said, you're not going to die, you're going to retaliate. Regardless of the outcome, you're going to head into this and with a sense of courage. And courage is the ability to throw yourself into anything without a guarantee of a successful outcome. I think this was definitely that moment. And I retaliated. If it wasn't for that, tapping into that inner potential, I wouldn't be here today, which I always say this, but my ex-wife would be elated about. Anyway, I am here, and yeah, it did happen, but it taught me three things. Life's a wonderful thing. And I always say this, that it's great for reflection, but hindsight didn't win any wars. But I think it's important that we remember these moments, these harsh moments. A lot of the gut reactions to go, that was horrible, I just want to forget it. But these are the moments we shouldn't forget, because as long as you can quantify them in a positive state, then they offer a positive asset to your life. So really, for three things in that moment, first of all was the fact that was my first break point. Break point's the moment you step into short-term discomfort for long-term gain. Short-term discomfort, fighting a fully grown chimp. The long-term gain was being here to tell the story. Secondly, it was like, regardless of your situation, no matter how dark, how bad it is, there's always a way out. There's always a way out. You've just got to
Yep.
keep momentum moving forward in a direction that is more positive, basically. And then thirdly, it was that tapping into that inner potential, which I would use that template again a number of times in the coming years. And that was getting through Special Forces selection twice. And also at the brink, I'm not going to say that word, but you know where I'm going with this. I was at the brink of thinking I didn't want to be here anymore. And I never attempted that. But it was that moment where my mind went, there's more to your story. These are
Yep.
the exact words some years later. There's more to your story than that. So I really take it back to that moment at 10 years old where it was a really defining path for me, or it threw me in a different path. So from that, I then joined the Special Forces, jumping ahead of quite a lot here. Well, I didn't join the Special Forces. I joined the Royal Marines at 18 years old. I was hunting for danger, wanted to be on the front line. Didn't find enough of that there. So I then decided to go for the Special Forces. Managed to get through that arduous selection process twice, actually. And then I didn't find it either there as well, and I was so frustrated and so confused about what I was doing in life. I thought I'd wasted all these years chasing something that didn't really make any sense to me. And then some years later, after coming back from the most humbling operation I did as a civilian, and that was rescuing kids from child
Yep.
prostitution, slavery in Southeast Asia, which was a really unbelievable moment. But due to the fact it all came crashing down, there was a manhunt for us. We had to escape out of the area we were in. And at that moment, when I came back, I did what I always had been used to doing. And when everything got tough up here, it all got too confusing, I would reach for the bottle. I would
Yeah.
reach for anything I could get my hands on, this path of self-destruction. And it took me to a really dark place. And it was again at that dark place, I said, no, it doesn't end like this. They were the words. And I decided that I would change my life. And basically, the two things that were the DNA for that was, first of all, it was knowing the power of helping other people. I mean, being at the coalface of helping those kids, I'll never forget the image in my head after rescuing these kids from a life of debauchery that they were destined for, and seeing them walk down into the sunrise, holding hands in their school uniform. I'll never forget that. That was
Wow.
incredible. But then also understanding from that, from my own breakdown, which was really, I will look at it now as a breakthrough, is understanding that we can change.
Yep.
Regardless of who you are, all these things that your ex-wives and whoever might say about you, your school teachers, a leopard never changes his spots, all this programming is bullshit. And you can change. You absolutely can be whoever you want to be. Understanding those two principles, helping other people, and knowing that we can change was the DNA for creating BREAK-POINT. And BREAK-POINT is a globally identified brand recognized for the positive growth and development of others. I then came back. I ended up stumbling across a TV show, which got my message out to the world. I did a lot of personal work on myself, which is really the fundamentals of that book there, Battle Ready. And I changed the person I was. And then all of a sudden, when I created something a lot more robust than what was there before, the TV opportunity came about, the exposure was there, and has allowed me to write books, be on TV shows all over the world. And now I'm doing exactly what I set out to do, and that is to be spreading my message across
Yep.
the world, mainly to men, but to anyone that wants to evolve and grow, I'm there.
Yeah, and helping others, and what we've said before is that you're not just helping one person; it's the people around them as well. If you're helping someone to give up alcohol, get fit again, then they're going to be a better person for their family and those they're around as well. So that's the incredible thing about it.
Yeah, I think also the fact, you got to understand the ripple effect. Like when I changed, I impacted the life of all those around me that dear to me. My family, who were concerned that I was this crazy
Yeah,
dude just going around absolutely mental stuff all over the world, not knowing if I'd probably be alive in a month or two. You've got to imagine the effect that you have on their lives as well, just by starting to look after yourself and start to get a bit more stability and ownership about who you are. And
yep,
the craziness had to go, Tim. The craziness had to go.
yep.
And in that, I made a lot of people's lives a better place.
Yeah, and I think we discussed this before. I mean, you've got an amazing story, and someone said to me once on a podcast, if you could go back and give 10, 12, 15-year-old you some advice, what would you do? And I said I wouldn't give him any advice. I'd say follow the path you've taken, because I've made some huge mistakes in my past and been in some bad places and whatever else, but it shaped the person I am today. And it's the same with you. And if you could go back and tell 10-year-old you not to go into that circus tent, you probably wouldn't be here where you are now.
But you know, this sounds bizarre, but and I actually thought we were heading down a path of what would you tell your younger self? And I'm so glad you turned that round, Tim, because my 10-year-old or whatever self would tell me to, you old git, you know what I mean? And it's like, I, it sounds crazy, but I do actually appreciate that experience as a 10-year-old boy. I thank the experience. And I know that sounds bizarre, but you know, it taught me so much. And I'm still to this day learning things from that. You know, so to actually sort of turn my back on that and say that was a horrible experience. And I'd like to see, you know, a lot of the time, this has been my answer for a long time too. It's like, do you have any regrets? And everyone goes, I've got no regrets. And I've been
Yeah.
saying that for a long. I've changed my mind on that. I've got loads of regrets, and I'm so pleased that I have, because I've learned so much from those regrets. You know, and to say I don't have any regrets, yes, there's things I preferred not to have happened. But then if everything I've gone through has been to get me where I am right now, this second, I am the happiest I've ever been. So thank you for the experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't have many regrets. I do have a few. One regret is I had a ticket for Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion tour 1992 at the Milton Keynes Bowl, and I didn't go because of a school cricket match. I thought I'll go next time. It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's a fair
anyway,
one, mate. You deserve to have a regret for that.
that's a fair one.
I'd like to just say on that, I do the ones that I wish didn't happen, because, you know, is the fact when you are actually have caused other people trauma.
Yeah,
And that deserves to be a regret that, you know, I suppose again, you still learn from that, but they're the ones that hit hard.
I would agree with that. It's not going back to what you said about not changing the chimp incident. It kind of ties in with the guest before you. It was an author, and he wrote a book called Operation Ironman, one man's 4-month journey from hospital bed to Ironman triathlon. He had a spinal cord tumor, which meant he had to go through spinal surgery. But that led for him saying, right, not only am I going to get fit, I'm going to do an Ironman. I'm not going to do it next year. I'm going to do it in 4 months. And he said the same as you, that he wouldn't go back and change having that spinal cord tumor, because at the time it was an awful period of time in his life, but it's made him a better person for it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I really stand by this, because I've like stolen this as a bit of a breakpoint kind of. What is breakpoint? You know, I believe it can be the gateway to your higher self, and usually that's at your lowest ebb. It's an opportunity for growth. You've only got to understand, so many people have got similar stories, haven't they? It's like, you know, I know so many veterans. Well, I know a fair few veterans who've got one limb, and they are doing more than able-bodied people that can't
Mm.
get off the couch saying,
Yeah,
"Oh, I
yeah.
just don't feel motivated." And you know, what's that come from? It's come from having to have all their limbs blown off before they've actually gone, right, I'm gonna like go to the next level. I mean, and it's interesting. I find humanity quite interesting, that, you know, you see people walking down the street. And I'm not saying, like, I can't give anyone a hard time for abusing themselves when it comes to alcohol and drugs and smoking and things like that, because I've been there myself. But I see people walking down the street doing that and then smoking and things like that. And I just think, why does it have to be the fact that we are told we're going to die before we actually sort our
Mm.
stuff out? You know what I mean? Before we actually get a grip of ourselves. And some people actually don't. They just go, this is just who I am, and they accept that. But we are a very interesting species, should I say. And you know what's interesting as well? We're the only species that knows it's going to die.
Yeah, good point.
But then we do everything to end
I
it
know.
quickly.
To end it quickly, I know. So moving on now, we mentioned triathlon just a minute ago, but in 2025, so last year, you took on a T100 triathlon, first triathlon you'd done, and then you went on to actually finish 7th in your age category in the Worlds in Qatar, which I was incredibly impressed with. This is a different kind of test. So what did that experience actually teach you about yourself?
Yeah, that was a really interesting one for me as well, because I know me and you had talked about triathlons. I saw you were doing yours, and I was like, Tim's doing half triathlon, I'm doing a full. And it was all planned for me to do the full one in September and all this. And just, I had plenty of excuses not to do it. I just wasn't prepared for it, to be honest. And training in Dubai in the summer is just a no-go. And I'm so glad now I never did the Ironman, because I would have probably never gone back to triathlon, because it would have been a horrible experience. Anyway, so after that, after sort of cancelling that until this year, I then decided to go for what's known as the T100. The T100 is 100Ks, 2K swim, 80K bike, and 18K run. God, that took some
Yeah.
work.
That does add to, up to 100.
I mean, doing the maths. So anyway, and I did that because some friends here in Dubai were like, yeah, we're doing this event. You should do this one. And I was like, yeah, I'll come along and do that. It'd be great to do it with the lads. And then a week before, I was like, what should we do about getting to the event? Everyone was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I've got to pull out because the dog ate my homework, all that kind of excuses. And my initial gut reaction was to go, yes. In the subconscious, it was like, this is your chance to opt out. And I started going down that avenue. But due to that beautiful gift of awareness, I went, no, you are going to do it regardless. You don't need mates there. Because really, what is the reason you won't do it then? What? Because your mates aren't going? How pathetic is that? So anyway, I put myself into it, and it was so funny because initially before I did it, never done the triathlon before. And I was like thinking, I wonder how long it is before they actually stop you from going on anymore. At what point did they say, look, you're not going to make the times, you've just got to. So I was thinking that level. Anyway, threw myself into it. I was doing all right. I was like a maniac on the bike. And to be honest, I was getting so emotional on the bike and I didn't know why it was. And I started to realize afterwards, I'd been holding myself back, my success was holding my potential back. I'll move more onto that anyway. But I did the bike and then did the run. The run was horrible. It was a really hot day. And then after I finished, I saw a friend there that had done it as well. And then afterwards, he was texting me and he said, what was your time? What did you do it in? And I told him and everything. And he said, you do realize that you've qualified for the World Championships. Initially, I was in shock and I thought the last thing I want to do is another triathlon because it was in 4 weeks' time. And I wasn't prepared for the one that I'd just done. But I couldn't end the story that way. It was like, after telling that story, you first triathlon, you qualify for the World Championships. Then what did you do? Well, I never did it. So I had to do it. But anyway, going back to that comment about success, the thing I learned from this was, and I never looked at it like this before, my success was holding back my potential. I had no idea of what potential I had. I created such a benchmark. Everyone praised me for being former special forces. That was sort of stamped in stone because of the TV show. So I was kind of living off the reputation, the perception, and that was keeping me in a holding pattern. All the time underneath, there was this inner potential. At that time as well, I was doing this get ripped 6-week transformation with the local gym. And all this stuff was like all happening at the same time. So I ditched the weight and that obviously helped massively for the triathlon. But then going through that, I was like, wow, I had no idea. And here's me thinking of what time do I have to do before they throw me off the course? And yet I qualify for the World Championships. And I'm like, what is this telling you?
Self-limiting
I had
beliefs.
this on special forces selection, Tim. It's like I had this back then. And that was, at the moment when I was going for special forces selection, when I got off the bus and my feet hit the floor, there was 250 people in front of me, all wanted the same as me. I was one of the youngest there. And when my feet hit the floor, the message in my head was, you're an idiot. Now, it wasn't the best message before you're about to do the hardest selection process in the world, but my initial gut reaction was, and I heard all these messages in my head saying, get back on the bus. You've made a big mistake. Your office has made a mistake recommending you for this, all this stuff. And then I just said to myself, just do today. Just do today. And I pushed through that anyway, managed to get through the whole course and everything. I was one of 5 at the end of the course that passed that selection out of 250. And at that point, going up the penny fan for the first time, it was like, who is this person up here then? Who is this person that's lying to me, lying to us all? And then I started, obviously now I understand a lot about the survival mechanism, how it's there to protect us. And it wants us to go down the path of least resistance because it's familiar and safe. But then this has come round again in a different realm. I felt weak back then, but now I'm successful. Now I'm successful and now I'm seeing a different side. So the success and being happy and healthy and everything else and fit for my age, and I can still see my feet, which is a blessing at 55. And I then realized that actual success and that ceiling of saying to yourself, I feel okay, I feel good, I feel great. That is the hardest ceiling to break. I mean, when I've been in a bad place in my life, I'm not looking after my health. There's an elephant in the room. I know exactly what I've got to do. I've got to stop drinking, stop taking the drugs, do this, stop looking after myself. That's simple. What you've got to do is I'm not saying it's simple, but what you've got to do is quite evident. It's a checklist, isn't it? Stop that, stop that, stop that. But when your brain is saying to you, I feel good, I feel great, I feel fine, that's a hard ceiling to break
Yeah.
because you don't know what you've got. You don't know the potential you've got. And this really unveiled it for me. Anyway, cut a long story short, I then went off to Qatar to do the world champs and I came seventh in the worlds. And listen, still wasn't my best performance. You know, I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm so appreciative of that because I know that there's room for growth there. So this year, I'm on that podium first.
On the podium. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you believe, you will. It's what we said before. It's the self-limiting beliefs. I
Yeah.
mean, so many people that when I'd never thought of doing a triathlon because I was telling myself I was no good at swimming. I wasn't good at swimming at the time, but you change the narrative to I'm not good at swimming at the moment, put the effort in. And I said this on one of our calls that when I was learning to swim, I just used visualization all the time for my swimming stroke and how good I was at swimming. I'm still not a great swimmer, but I got round the 1.8K in 43 minutes, which I was very pleased with.
That's brilliant. What do you mean you're not a good swimmer? That's a great time.
I hear people in doing triathlons. I'm no good on the run. I always blow up on the run. Well, if you tell yourself you will, then you will. Start changing the narrative. The run should be the easy bit because you're not going to
Mm,
drown or shouldn't drown
yeah.
anyway. Your bike's not
Yeah.
going to break or have a puncture. You're not going to fall off the bike. It's just you and your body. So tell yourself
Mm.
you're good at running.
Yeah, no, 100%. And this is, you know what? It drives me mad as well because people, you know, Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, they talk about this a lot. And that is when you can hold a thought in your head for around about 17 seconds, so they say, it starts to change the chemistry in your body. Your brain releases complementary medicine as long as you hold that thought. And then if you can hold it for another 17 seconds thereabouts, you know, it really starts to compound. And what frustrates me is these things,
Yeah.
which are a brilliant servant, terrible master. Now, I see people in the gym all the time with these, and I've changed the name of our gym where I live here in Dubai to a mobile phone check-in station because I just, you know what I mean? Not only that, even if they are working out, to actually be engaged on this on Instagram as you're
Yeah.
doing the leg press or whatever it might be, that whole concept of releasing complementary medicine is all wasted. It's all wasted. So get rid of these,
I,
especially when you're
I,
training, doing stuff. And it's about, like you said, about the visualization, about the focus. You know, it's so important. Right? Even when you are doing leg press or whatever, think about the muscle growing.
yeah.
You know, this is so important. There was an actual, I think it was some kind of, actually, Joe Dispenza talks about it in one of his books. I think it's Superhuman or something like that, or I can't remember which book it is. But there was a load of Mexican maids, you know, they clean room after room after room in these motels. So you imagine the amount of actual physical activity that they're doing, right? Lifting quite heavy mattresses, putting the sheets on, room to room to room. And these maids apparently were quite rotund, I mean, a little bit on the larger side. And what they did with these maids is they started getting them to think about the fact that they were going to a gym,
Yeah.
that their work was more engaged with building muscle and losing weight. Their body composition started to change very quickly over a period of time. And that is living proof that when we engage this,
Mm,
the biology starts to change. So in the absence of that, you know, when we're so distracted in this world that we're so distracted in, our brain can only handle 5 to 9 bits of information at any one time. That's when we're not stressed. When we're stressed, it goes down to 1, maximum 2. But this world is so consuming when it comes to our conscious mind that it's so important that we get away from these things as much as
agreed.
possible. And when you're doing stuff like your triathlon training or anything like that, your brain is on the game. And like you've just said there, Tim, you know, if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. So a lot of men listening aren't trying to be elite performers or elite athletes. They're simply trying to regain discipline, health, and direction. But why do you think that comfort has become such a powerful enemy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And something that I sat down some years ago, I locked myself away in a house. It was the fundamentals of that book, Battle Ready. And I just couldn't understand after these years of being a special forces soldier at the top of my game. And over a 10-year period, I'd gone absolutely subsurface. Like, and I couldn't understand how I could be that person who wasn't motivated to go running, wasn't motivated to look after himself. And yet I'd been this amazing super soldier, if you want to call it that. So I really started to look into this and I realized that that survival mechanism wants to do two things. It's prioritizing that. You imagine back in the primal days, this is obviously very apparent back then when you were fighting for survival. There's two things that your body wants to do. And that's, first of all, it wants to eat whenever it can. And secondly, it wants to rest whenever it can. So when it's not engaged in hunting and anything like that, or trying to build shelter, rest, allow the mechanism to rest. So you imagine now in a world that's absolutely built around comfort. Remember back in the days, you'll relate to this, Tim. If you wanted a new pair of trainers, it
Yeah.
was a task, wasn't it? It was a mission.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like you'd have to go to the shops. You'd have to wait till Saturday more than likely. You'd have to go to the shops. You'd have to go around certain shops. You'd have to pick your trainers and then come home. Now you can just press a button, they're at your door. And also the fact that there's a Pret or whatever your fancy is every 100 meters, especially if you get to
McDonald's
London.
delivery.
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
exactly.
Yep.
Deliveroo, it's everything. So I find there's this conflict, right? There's the two sides of us. And that is the soul wants fuller expression and expansion and experience and everything else. But our survival mechanism would be more than happy if we sat in a corner and just ate food and procreated. And that might sound appealing to some people, but even the best people in the world, that gets boring. But the fact of the matter is that survival instinct is far more of a default than the living life and experiencing and doing amazing things and risking things and not playing safe. That we are pushed, if we're not conscious about what we want to, if we're not conscious of that, we can very easily become lazy and we become the byproduct. You know what I mean? A lot of men, especially, provide. If it's not at work, especially business owners as well, building massive businesses, building a successful business, building or providing for your family, and then you become the byproduct. And it's like that neglect is natural because it's almost like we've been programmed to believe that if you focus on yourself, it's selfish.
Yeah.
And it's so wrong because one thing I'll say, you know what? And I'll say this to my wife, I'm more important than you. I'm more important than my kids. I'm more important than any job, anything. I am the most important project there is. Because if I can get myself in a good place, if I can create a strong foundation, a root system below me that makes me absolutely unstoppable, I'm a better asset to everyone because broken people break people. They're no good to
Totally agree.
anyone.
Yeah.
We could talk about this all day, Tim. I know as both we could talk about this, but the fact of the matter is the body wants to go the path of least resistance. It wants to go familiar. It wants to go safe. So even your destructive habits that you've been doing for the last 3 years, 6 months, whatever, as far as your brain is concerned, it's not killed you. So it's good to keep on doing. So even when I was at the point of like that abusive nature and I was looking forward and I was going, well, imagine how great my life would be if I could do this, that, and the other and look after myself. And although that made perfect sense, my survival brain hadn't done that before or for a long time anyway. So it was absolutely petrified of doing something that was uncharted territory. So it wants to keep you back doing what it did yesterday and the day before. And this is, once you understand that, I mean, the awareness is the key to everything. And again, what's happened over time as well, I believe we've got to put the servant back in its place. I consider a conscious mind is the master, and your subconscious mind, which is your program, that should be the servant. But because we've spent so much time being distracted in our frontal cortex and our conscious mind, the subconscious has taken over. So we've had a whole role reversal where we're not listening, we're not commanding the system anymore. The system is commanding us based on past experiences, based on all the programming that's coming in from television and programs. So it's about putting yourself back in charge of that. And when your brain says something, you're aware enough to go, hold on, is that really where I want to go? Is that really the truth of the outcome I want? And you say, no, I'm going a different path.
Yeah.
So I think it's just putting yourself back in control.
I had one of those internal arguments this morning at 10 to 6 because I'd planned to go in the ice bath and the bed was warm. It was raining outside and my subconscious was like, no one will know. No one will know if you don't go in. It's cold. Stay in bed. And I was like, no, I'm going in. And then it's like, no. And honestly, it was probably about a 5-minute debate. And what got me out of bed was like, I'm on the podcast with Ollie today. I can't not have gone in the ice bath that morning. So I did. I went in and felt great afterwards.
I think me and you had the same kind of morning.
You do an ice bath as well?
Yeah. I've been doing something I've skipped recently. And I've this week I went, no, right. So This is the fifth day now, fifth day in a row. But this is the reason everyone go, oh, ice bath. I think for me, why do an ice bath? I mean, there's loads of scientific proof about the benefits, physiology and physical, but I really think for everything you've just mentioned there, Tim, that to me is such a true benefit. And sometimes when I'm in those moments of constant negotiation about trying to get out of it, sometimes I go, well, how about you just don't do it then?
Mm.
How would you feel about that? And straight away, my little, whether it's ego or whatever it is, or the fact that my stronger self steps forward and says, there's no way that's not happening. It just cuts the negotiation out of the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but find that is such a win with things. And I think Andrew Huberman, I know actually, was talking to an interview with David Goggins about this actually. And he was talking about there's a part of the brain, a central part of the brain that actually grows when you put yourself into something that you don't want to do. It's such a growth benefit when it comes to your mental ability.
With the cold water as well, I mean, there's loads of benefits. We could go on all day about them. But if I do an ice bath with a mate, or if we go in the sea when it's like 10 degrees and you come out, you get like a bit of a natural high, which I can kind of relate to when we've been out on like an all day booze session. We're not drunk at all, but you've got that kind of happy, giddy, chatty, friendly type vibe going on. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's that dopamine release. And this is like our bodies, the normal dopamine hits, which we live in a dopamine society. That could be pornography, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be shopping, whatever it is, Instagram, all these distractions. This is no good for the system because our system is not designed to have these rapid ups and downs. And what the ice bath does brilliantly is it gives a slow release of dopamine. So exactly as you're talking about there, Tim, I'll have an ice bath in the morning, and for hours afterwards, it's that slow release dopamine, which is how our system is designed. Probably it's the fact that I never died. I'm going to be happy for the next few hours.
So we talk about discipline a lot. I mean, in your experience, how much of this discipline for your good habits is about motivation, and how much of it is actually about identity and standards?
Yeah, I think that this word motivation, I think I struggle with this a little bit because motivation comes and goes. And if you're sat there using the fact you haven't got motivation to not do something, then you really don't understand what motivation is, because motivation really is lack of clarity a lot of the time. But understanding that motivation is like a muscle, sometimes it's there some days and it's not the others. It wears out, it gets tired. And that doesn't matter what level you're at. You could be an Olympian, you could be an astronaut, I don't know, whatever. And that happens with us all. So discipline for me is something that I fought against for a long time. And I think it goes back to my upbringing. I was always, me and my brother felt like our dad's employees as opposed to his sons. It was massively disciplined. And I actually really did rebel against that, even through the military. Anyone telling me what to do, I wasn't going to listen. It was a bit of a nightmare, really. But now I am starting to really value what it's given me. I've actually started to not fight against it. Discipline for me provides freedom. And it's like when you don't have discipline, life's chaotic. It's like people think that discipline is some kind of militant thing, and it sounds like a very boring life, but there's nothing like, I consider discipline. I came up with this, and it's like, I consider discipline as the disciple within. That to me is discipline, because
I like that.
you are always attaining to be the better version of you. And if you want to have something outside of yourself to represent what that looks like, that's fine, but it's always striving for a better standard. So really it is about identity for me. I really do praise now that level of discipline, and that it's not something that you can't say I am not a disciplined person, because you learn, you grow into that. And regardless of whether you are disciplined or not, it's what we did. How you do everything, how you do anything is how you do everything. I can't remember whoever said that, but it's such a great statement. It's not like, well, I'm disciplined when I go for a run every day, but the rest of my life's absolutely chaotic. Once you create discipline, it revolves around every asset of your life, every facet and everything. And really, another thing before discipline, which I really believe has to happen, is you have to have order. Without order, there is no discipline. And it's like, I can remember when my life was not going too well, and I'd finished a relationship. I was then living at a mate's house. This is when I lived in Australia. And it wasn't a good situation. But the one thing I made sure I did do that is when I walked back into that bedroom, which is the only space I had, everything was in order. I didn't walk back in that room and it was just like a whole mess. There was stuff. It was because the true representation of where my head was at was a mess.
Yep.
But you know, if I came back to that room every day and things were all over the place, it would just confirm to me that your life is in ruins. It's chaotic. So I really believe that getting the first thing to do when you are in a bit of a not a great place is to gain order. Once you get order, then you can move on to discipline. But without order, you have no discipline.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And certainly just continuing on the theme of identity. I had this on my coaching group with some of the guys who were doing dry January and kind of just white knuckling the whole month. And, I'm just going to get through, got a few more days now. And as we said before, the problem is that they haven't moved to a new identity. They're still identifying as their old self, their old habits, their old stories. So they're just abstaining from booze and making it really, really hard for themselves. So if you don't actually go and change the person you want to be and that identity, you're really going to struggle to actually change your habits, aren't you?
Yeah. You know what? It's an interesting one because half the time when they're doing those sort of challenges, the dry January stuff and everything else, I mean, I've ran those before as well. And my whole idea is that people will actually start to get some clarity and start to feel great as it did for me. Because it's like not drinking for me. It's like one of those things you can tell a drinker how great it is, but you'll never actually be able to give them that experience without them experiencing not drinking. You know, they've got to throw themselves into it. They're never going to take your word and think, oh, well, that sounds brilliant. They've got to throw themselves into it. And the whole idea with the 30 days dry Jan for me has always been to get people. And I've got people now that still message me saying, I had no intention to do the dry Jan, not to stop drinking, but I just felt so good after 30 days. I've carried it on. And, you know, there's people that check in with me every year now. And it's fantastic. But I really find that they haven't gone inside. They're doing it for external validation and to please the audience and to say, look what I did, and to try and prove to themselves, look, I'm not addicted because I did 30 days
Yeah.
without drinking. And that's not enough to keep on going. You know, you've got to, when you're giving up anything that's socially driven, it's like a massive part of your life. And when you're giving up something like that, you've got to assign purpose to the discomfort of change. And if you can't, if there's nothing that you can sit down and say, well, my life would be so much better if I didn't drink because of X, Y, Z. The fact it's an absolute carcinogenic and it's killing people, that should be enough. Imagine if alcohol was your mate. I mean, how long would that be your friend for? You know what I mean? It's like someone that lies to you, robs you blind every single time and makes you look like an idiot. You'd extract yourself from that person straight away. So yeah, I just find with anything though, you know, you've got to assign purpose to the discomfort of change. And you need to sit down and go internal. And it's like, I always say this as well. Life change isn't about a date. It's a decision. And like New Year's resolutions, 30 days and everything, that's based on a date, right? You're starting one day, you're finishing the next day. It has to be a decision, not a date, because a date is external. A decision is an internal process that you've gone through for a reason.
Agreed. And you touched on something interesting there about people doing it just to prove a point. That's one of the main reasons why goals fail, is because it's not your goal anyway. You're doing it to please your missus or just to prove a point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I find this a lot. I think it comes a lot with, as you get a bit more mature, I'd like to think everyone sort of evolves a bit and the ego starts to fade out a bit. But a lot of it is ego. I see a lot of people, you know, they're going, this is where the whole fitness thing as well. I mean, we all want to look good, but if that's your main motivation to look good, it's for other people.
Yeah.
Your motivation is because you want to look good for someone else. And that's going to be short lived because you'll stop getting the initial gratification for how great you look and everything else like that. And then it's not strong enough to keep that consistency. So I really believe when it comes to things like that, it's about the feeling. This is what we've seemed to have lost. It's how you feel, and the looking good becomes the byproduct. Because there's so many people that actually are focused on the looking good, and they're quite happy to sacrifice the feeling good to look good. You've only got to look at Ozempic and all that GLP-1 and all that crap now.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Laura, my wife, about, as obviously you know Tim, and we are just talking about how these people are just sacrificing that feeling just to look good, and it's just so horrendous because exercise gives you so much more than looking good. And the body goes, thank you for looking after me. I'm going to release some endorphins now to make you feel good. We're going to release some dopamine to make you feel good. There's a whole system that goes on, but I think it's such a toxic world that we live in. And, I also refer to, like, if someone said to me, like, honestly, for all the exercise, and I spend a couple of hours every day, near enough, sometimes a little bit less, but doing exercise, looking after myself. If someone came up and said, look, you don't have to do that, here's a pill, I would not take it.
No, agreed. I'm the
I don't
same.
want it. So
Yeah, I have to go. I'm gym minimum 3, probably 4 times a week. I like to go at lunch, and it's for a lot of reasons. And I mean, one of them is I want to set a good example to my kids. 9-year-old dad who's still got a six pack is
yeah.
pretty good. But I also find it gives me confidence. So walking into a meeting room that could be potentially slightly confrontational, if I know that I'm ripped and looking good underneath, I can exude confidence and own the room.
Absolutely, mate. 100%. I can totally relate to that, more so recently because I got totally ripped up. And it just, you hold yourself differently, even if, you've got clothes on, but you feel that confidence. You feel like a warrior. And especially in this day and age, now you look down the street, you're like, a fit looking person stands out.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, you look at all these things on Instagram I see from time to time, and it shows you the beach in the 70s. No fat people, no overweight people. And when you walk into a room and you can see your feet, your shirt's baggy around down the stomach and a bit more pressed on the chest. It says a lot more than I'm fit. It says I look after myself, I respect myself. And that means a lot, because in this world, people put better fuel in their cars than they do their bodies.
So through your coaching work, you got Battle Ready, Project U, a number of online courses. You now are doing the Mirror Reset as well. So you see men at very different stages. So what's the most, would you say, is the most common identity conflict that you see holding them back?
I think at the end of the day, they've lost all kinds of sense of pride of who they are and who they want to be. It's almost like they've totally lost motivation to focus on themselves. We talked about this before, that men have become the byproduct. They think it's all about being a man, is all about give, 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 give. But they're not giving themselves. It is about give. But what portion of that is about giving yourself? And if the answer to that is 0, then that needs to be changed. We should every single day be focusing on us before we look outside of ourselves to help other people, because in looking after yourself, it's helping everyone around you, especially those you love. So really, I think at the end of the day, I think it's as simple as people don't understand. They want to say, look, on paper, I'm doing everything I could. It's like, one thing I'll say about this, Tim, because I'm big on this, and it's great you mentioned about your kids looking at you and being an inspiration. I get a lot of questions about that. It's like, how do I make sure my kids have got the best chance in this world? It's simple. You can say all the words you want to your kids. If you were to say to your kids, tidy your bedroom, and then they walk past your bedroom and it's an absolute shitbox, the words don't mean anything. So really, at the end of the day, if you want to be the best, give your kids the best chance, you be the representation, because every person, every child is a result of the programming from their parents. We're a result of what we watched as kids. 0 to 7, we're on constant record. You don't get an analytical mind till about 12, I think, something like that. So we're on constant record. You learn so much in that time just by looking. And that's what the mechanism does. Even in the last trimester of birth, in the stomach, you start to listen to the outside world to know the initial survival tactics to stay alive. Not much use because you're a baby and you need your parents then, you need your mum then. But you'd learn so much in that time. So be the representation of how you want them to be. And I've been a bad father. When I look back at my time as a father, drinking, arguing, drugs, all kinds of stuff going on. That wasn't in front of them, but it was all going on. It's toxic. And to think that, they're only kids, they don't understand that. But anyway, going back to that question, it's the amount of people come in just don't understand their true potential. And I think in this world as well, we've been programmed to believe, or we've been programmed to start praising gods that are on the TV that spend their life pretending to be someone else. And then also when it comes to the likes of myself, it comes to Olympians or whatever it might be, we've been trained to believe these people are cut from a different cloth. We've been trained to believe we're handing off our potential to these other people thinking, well, that's not me. That guy's a former special forces soldier. That guy's an Olympian. Everyone has the ability to be whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a get out clause for putting in the hard work. Well, he's a special forces soldier. He can do that, blah, blah, blah. I bleed and breathe just like everyone else. I'm no different to everyone else. I've been through some extreme circumstances, but we're all the same. We all come from the same format, with the same makeup. So really it's about getting people to believe in themselves and
Yep.
understanding that you can unless there's something physically wrong with you, there's no reason why you can't achieve exactly what you want. So I think it really, at the end of the day, it's creating that sense of belief and also understanding it's not as hard as we think, as the brain tries to make out. The brain is trying to keep you in the pattern of behavior that you've done for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I saw something on Instagram recently. It was saying that if you want to be great and achieve great things, the bar is actually not that high at the moment because so many people are consumed with scrolling, giving their lives away to their phone because it's easier, just consuming rubbish, getting food delivered, and then falling into that trap that's so comfort that they can't get out of it.
Yeah, and I think as well, on top of that, your brain will normalize its current state.
Yep.
And again, that falls back into the fact if you've done it yesterday and the day before, it's not killed you, so it's all good. But, even quite mediocre life, I think that a big problem at the moment is really the fact that we are being pushed into sort of our survival mechanism. Like, we're almost like on that desert island, and you don't want to move outside of your safe parameters. But unknown to you, just over the hill is a holiday resort, but you won't want to go over the mountain because that could cause you some harm. It's like keeping us locked in that sort of don't upset the status quo. And from that, we then start to think that average is great. And average isn't great. Average is a survival mechanism. It's okay to stop and stall and recalibrate, but this whole thing called comfort as well, I used to demonize that, but I don't demonize it anymore. There's a place for it. You can stop, recalibrate, reassess, decide which way you're going, and then move off. But you shouldn't set up camp there. It's a simple example. It's a simple question, is it? Am I constantly embracing comfort?
Yeah, I think it's Gary Brecker that said aging is the relentless pursuit of comfort, and it's so
Yes.
true.
Yeah, well, they reckon now one of the biggest killers is what's the term for it? It's what's it lifestyle? Sedentary.
Sedentary. Yeah.
Sedentary lifestyle is one of the biggest killers, just
Yeah.
below the medical institutions.
Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Last question now, Ollie. So if a man is listening right now who feels stuck in old patterns, what would you say is the first internal shift that he needs to make before any program or any plan or any habits will actually work?
I think what they have to do, they have to initiate a destructive change in habitual behavior in line with a predetermined goal if possible. But even if not, all you're doing is breaking the chain, breaking the cycle of who you are right now. And that could simply mean the fact that you go out into nature, you go for a walk, you do something healthy that you haven't done for a long time. You don't allow the wall to build on the inside. So before you know it, you're so tightly packed, you can't even make a move. It's just changing the program. Just put a glitch in the program and start to do a little bit, don't do anything drastic, nothing drastic, just something small that breaks the pattern of behavior. And obviously, I believe the outdoors is an amazing thing for that. You can't outthink a negative wired thought. You can't sit there. I've had these very negative thoughts for days and days and days and days. You're not going to outthink it. You have to break that pattern of behavior with something by taking a little bit of action. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Ollie, I've really enjoyed talking with you. We've covered a lot on here. I think it's going to be very useful. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Tim. Long overdue. Really enjoyed it, mate, as always.